Howdy folks, hope you're all having a good one, and welcome back to Why You Have to Be Mad in World of Warships. This is the video series where, well, often people will send me replays in where the action that occurs in the battle isn't really enough to carry an entire video. But despite that, there are often moments within the battle that 100% deserve to be seen. And we're starting off today's show with Jan 070 here in the US Navy Tier 8 battleship, the North Carolina. It's a Tier 8 domination battle on the neighbours map, although, honestly, that's really not important. The first thing worth paying attention to in this battle is the chat. Yes, it's the North American server. Everybody starts comparing the outside temperature. Hang on a minute, Jingles. That guy's saying that it's -3 degrees outside and he's in Sweden. Surely that's the European server. Well, that's what I thought at first, but then look at where all the other replies are coming from. There's one fella there playing from Argentina saying it's a nice balmy 18 degrees. But, well, Southern Hemisphere. Then somebody else lets us know that it's 4 degrees in Korea. Well, surely that's the Asian server. Well, that's probably a US serviceman playing from a military base in Korea. Although I wasn't sure about that until the rest of the comments started coming in. Also, another thing that was confusing was the fact that they're given all of the temperatures in Celsius, which is very un-American. And then somebody comes in from San Diego letting us know that it's in the 70s, which is obviously in Fahrenheit. And then the guy who started it all, letting us know that it was -3 degrees in Sweden, lets us know that he's actually from California. So, yeah. Don't know why he's playing in Sweden, but he's still playing on a North American server because he's from California and that's where his account is. And that explains why he wants to see snow, because he's from California, and unless you go up into the mountains around Aspen for a bit of skiing, you don't often see snow in California. And here's where the black catting begins. -4 sounds nice, it's -21 here right now. Hang on, Jingles, what do you mean black catting? This is a naval expression. Well, it's a Royal Naval expression. There's always some bullshitter. It doesn't matter what you've done, they've done it better. If you've got a big black cat, they've got a cat that's bigger and blacker. If you've been to Tenerife, they've been to 11erife. And the guy who's currently enjoying -21 degrees temperatures is obviously from the Great White North. There it is. Northern Alberta, Canucklestan. I mean, it was always going to be a Canadian, wasn't it? Well, it could have been somebody from North Dakota or Montana, but in this case, it is in fact a Canadian. So, amusing though that was, it's not the reason why we're watching this particular replay. As unlikely as it sounds, at around the 15-minute mark, Jan, in his battleship, is sneaking up on a bunch of enemy ships. He's lucky to catch sight, well, the friendly split catches sight of the enemy Kid, who doesn't actually know that he's here. And neither does the New Orleans, who chooses to come out at a very unfortunate moment. Now, Jan doesn't completely one-shot him, but the Citadel is definitely going to leave a mark. Of course, the Kid knows he's here and he's already got torpedoes away, but Jan saw that coming and he's slowed down. The New Orleans gets finished off by the friendly Amagi. Jan does take the one torpedo, but it doesn't cause a flood, adding to the problems caused by the single fire that he's currently suffering, so he doesn't have to use the damage control. The Kids manage to escape. Meanwhile, happening off camera, the enemy submarine just got rammed by the friendly Shiratsu and survived. I don't know how that's possible, but, well, it happened. But things are about to get extremely hot and exciting for Jan, because that's an extremely suspicious looking smoke screen, and it's almost certainly not the enemy battleship. Yep, here comes the Kid, and he's definitely had time to reload his torpedoes. And he's not alone, because the Tengshei is coming out as well. Now, he's angled against the Tengshei, and initially I was wondering, Kid, why would you come out in front of a North Carolina if your torpedoes are not ready to go? But he's looking for a better torpedo angle. Meanwhile, Jan has the armor-piercing loaded, which was almost certainly never going to finish off the Kid, but he's instantly swapped to the high explosive. He just has to survive these torpedoes. Or maybe his secondaries can get the job done. I think he's probably going to eat 2, maybe 3. Yep, 3 torpedoes. He's down to 3,000 health. There's an instant damage control. The high explosive is about... It is loaded. He's just waiting to get the guns turned around. The secondaries would have probably finished the Kid, but I don't think he wanted to risk waiting. And now he switches back to the armor piercing, and he's got the Tengshei to worry about. There goes the heel. But because he has the ammunition switching talent on his captain, it's only going to take him 8 seconds to reload the armour piercing, which is really bad news for the Teg Shay. That was 5 citadels from American super heavy 16-inch armour piercing. That was a paddling of epic proportions. That was an instant 53,000 damage, and by some miracle, Jan is still alive, and no, he doesn't understand how that's possible either. Before we put this particular battle to bed, however, there is something else that I wanted to point out. It's something that I saw in chat earlier, which reminded me of an old Royal Marine joke. So, the Royal Marines exercise in Norway in the winter every year. They're probably out there right now. It's in order to fulfill one of the Royal Marines' missions, which is to be dropped into Norway and slow down any Russian attack attempting to take the Norwegian Atlantic ports and airfields. And the part in chat that made me remember this Royal Marine joke is where the guy from California, who's currently in Sweden, says, "Can the cold get you pregnant?" And Jan replies, "Secondarily," which means, yeah, but not directly. So here's the joke. There's a Royal Marine on exercise in Norway one winter, and it's bloody cold and there's nothing to do, so he asks one of the locals, "What do you do for fun around here?" And the Norwegian fella says, "Well, in the summer there's the fishing and there's the fucking." And the Marine says, "Well, what do you do in the winter?" And he says, "Well, it's too cold for fishing." Right, anyway, moving on swiftly. For our second offering, we join Vanji 35 here in HMAS Vampire in this clan battle here on the Shatter map. And he's about to have numerous brown trouser moments. As he came out to try to finish off the enemy Marceau, he only got spotted for a fraction of a second before popping his smoke, but that was all the time that it took for the enemy Des Moines to clap his lollyboat cheeks really hard for about 3/4 of his health. And while the Des Moines did not survive, I mean, he died just as quickly. That's not an awful lot of consolation to Vanji here. So there's brown trouser moment number 1. Brown trouser moment number 2 occurs shortly after this encounter. That is an extremely suspicious looking smoke screen up ahead. And we know that the enemy gearing is in that location, and he has just been spotted. But he's laid a smoke for the enemy Venezia. How do we know it's a Venezia? Well, I mean, the Venezia has its own high-speed smoke, but there's practically no such thing as an Italian heavy cruiser captain who understands the limitations of his own smoke firing penalty. So, yeah, he's basically just outed himself. But that wasn't the brown trouser moment. Remember the gearing? He was last spotted heading, well, more or less in this direction, wasn't he? There was a Marceau, yep, the same Marceau that basically cost Vanji almost all of his health at the hands of the enemy Des Moines earlier. And he was also heading into this location from the other direction, but he just got sunk by a friendly cruiser. So either one or two things is happening here. Either Vanji's plan is to try to take the gearing out in a gunfight, which is going to be risky. I mean, the Vampire's not bad in a gunfight, but neither's the gearing, and neither of them have particularly large amounts of health remaining. So he's either planning to do that so he can sneak around behind the Venezia and torpedo him, or he's just forgotten that the gearing is there. I mean, either is possible, honestly, I don't know. Note that at this point in the battle, the kills are even, but his team have all 3 of the cap circles. Yes, the scores are reversed, and they're currently enjoying a 300-point lead over the enemy team. And then Vanji gets spotted, and it's the gearing. And here's the second and final brown alert moment. The gearing makes the mistake of turning nose in, so it's only got the front 2 turrets firing, and Vanji's got all 3 of his. But that would have still been enough for the gearing to win if one of Vanji's salvos hadn't taken out one of the gearing's 2 turrets. So he survives the encounter with the gearing, but he does not survive the encounter with the enemy Conda, who had the opportunity to shoot at him because the gearing had spotted him. But this isn't why we're watching this battle. No, the fun stuff happens after Vanji gets killed. The Venezia has managed to sink the friendly Moskva, so the team are now behind 1 kill, although they still have all 3 of the cap circles, and they still have that 300-point lead. Meanwhile, Crunchy 26 here in the friendly Piemonte is engaged in a 1v1 with the Conda that just sank Vanji. Now he's only got the 2 front turrets here because he's not going to expose broadside to, well, that thing. although the enemy Condor doesn't appear to have any compunctions about doing exactly that. This should have been suicide for the French cruiser, because let's not forget, the Piemonte has 6 254mm guns up front, and he does have the armour piercing loaded, and he's not being dumb enough to swing the arse out to get the 2 rear turrets firing. This should have been enough to finish off the opposition. And yet, it appears like he just can't find the enemy cruiser's citadel, and he's scoring nothing but overpen after overpen. And while the Condor certainly isn't going to citadel him from this angle, he has got all of his guns firing, and they're chipping away enough of the Piemonte's health that, against all sense of justice, the Frenchman actually wins the fight. But that's not the worst thing. Did you see what the score was when Crunchy 26 died? 999 points! Yes, really. So what could possibly be worse than that? Well, okay, there's only 2 of them left now, but they do still have a 300-point lead with 2 of the cap circles, and they're less than 30 points away from winning. Oh shit, this main's caught in a crossfire between the Venezia and the Jacksonville. He's down to less than 20,000 hit points. He has a double fire. He has a triple fire. Oh crap, there goes the heel. One of the fires has gone out. 996, 900, and he's dead. That's right. The team was 1 point away from winning, not once, but twice. They still managed to choke. I mean, in retrospect, you can see that the Condor knew that Vanji's team was about to win, and so he took the risk of exposing broadside in order to take the Piemonte out because he had to get the kill. And RNG was on his side, and it worked. And while the main also managed to take the team to 999 points, 1 point away from winning, getting himself into a crossfire between a Jacksonville and a Venezia, although, I mean, he was probably already committed at that point. Either way, it's left the lone surviving ship on Vanji's team, the Annapolis, in a rather precarious position, because he's got a Satsuma, of all things, in the team's last remaining cap circle, which means that they're now stuck on 945 points, which means to stand any chance of winning, he has to kill the Satsuma, which is unlikely. It's far more likely the Satsuma's going to kill him. But the Satsuma doesn't even have to kill him. He just has to survive long enough to flip that cap. And with slightly less than 7 minutes of the battle remaining, and with the enemy team in possession of all 3 of the cap circles and now only 200 points behind, 7 minutes is more than enough for the enemy team to win on points. But you know what 7 minutes is also more than enough time for? It's more than enough time for the other 3 enemy cruisers to close in and assist the Satsuma in finishing the Annapolis off. By some miracle though, the Annapolis does actually survive, and the enemy team take it on points, when Vanji's team were 1 point away from winning, not once, but twice. So how are we going to top that one? Well, I don't know if it's necessarily going to top it, but Quibus the Cat here, last one left alive on his team against 5 enemies in the German Tier 10 submarine, the U-4501, is going to have a damn good go. This is 100% not a battle that he should have won. I realise that's a bit of a spoiler. You see, here's the situation. Not only is the last one left alive on his team against 5 enemies, he's the last one left alive on his team against 5 enemies that consist of another submarine and 2 destroyers, as well as a pair of battleships. Every single member of the enemy team, with the exception of possibly the enemy submarine, is faster than him. The Ipiranga is faster than him. Both of the Jaegers are way faster than him. Even the Grosser Kurfürst is way faster than he is. And all 4 of them either have depth chargers or depth charge attack planes. His only advantage is stealth, but of course he has to risk being spotted every time he surfaces, or at least comes to periscope depth, in order to find something to shoot at with his torpedoes. And even if he doesn't get spotted when he surfaces or comes to periscope depth in order to acquire a target, in order to guide his homing torpedoes onto the target of choice, he has to ping them with the sonar, And that's going to point a line straight back to where the sonar ping came from, allowing them to close in and harass him with those depth charge attack planes. And if any of them even scores a near miss, it's going to trigger an oil leak. And the oil will leave a mark on the surface, again allowing them to narrow in on his position. So the odds are very much stacked against him here. At the moment, he's just trying to flip this one cap circle, since it seems pretty obvious that at least one of the Jaegers, rather than rushing over here to finish him off, is flipping one of the cap circles. Under the circumstances, and as we'll see at the end of the battle, not necessarily a bad idea. What is a bad idea, however, is for an Iparanga, who has less than 5,000 hit points remaining, to be closing in and trying to attack something that he can't actually see yet, although it's fairly obvious where Quibus is. Quibus? I don't know, it's something Dutch. I mean, it's fairly obvious where he is because this cap circle didn't flip itself, but when you're in a battleship, closing in on a very, very stealthy unit that happens to be armed with homing torpedoes, and you have less than 5,000 hit points remaining, I don't think your torpedo damage reduction is really going to make that much of a difference. Note how Quibus uses his ping though. You see, you don't ping the target and then launch the torpedoes. You launch the torpedoes and then you ping the target. Because the ping doesn't last forever, and the target might use his damage control to negate it. The thing is, his damage control's on something like a minute or more of a cooldown, and your ping's only on a 20-second cooldown. So even if he wipes the first ping with the damage control, as long as the torpedoes are on the way, you can just ping them again and give them something to home in on. The Iparanga was extremely lucky to survive that first torpedo hit. He's not going to survive another one. Torpedoes are on the way. There's the ping. I don't know if the Iparanga actually has his damage control ready to go. Here come the depth charge attack planes. Quibus drops the periscope depth, which reduces his detection range and also allows him to continue to track the target. It's only going to take one more torpedo. This is very much a case of the Iparanga choosing to zig when he should have chosen to zag. Nevertheless, I mean, if he'd gotten into that fight when he had a bit more hit points, he could have won it. It's just that you don't go chasing after a submarine when you only have 4,300 health. The Grosser Kurfürst, however, has a number of advantages that the Iparanga did not. First, he has a lot more health. Secondly, he has Hydro. And it's the Hydro that detects Quibus's periscope and forces him to dive. And that brief moment where Quibus was detected by Hydro does allow the Grosser Kurfürst to land some pretty accurate hits with its depth charge attack planes, causing an oil leak, which forces Quibus to use his own damage control there to fix the oil leak and prevent it from giving his position away. Of course, now he's dived, he's lost sight of the Grosser Kurfürst, so he triggers his own hydrophone here. Now this does allow him to reacquire the position of the Grosser Kurfürst, but only for 6 seconds. I should probably point out, by the way, that if you're thinking, hang on a minute, wasn't the Grosser Kurfürst running hydro? Shouldn't he know where Quibus is? In reality, very probably yes, but this isn't reality, it's World of Warships, and, well, hydro doesn't work the way it should. Let's not forget that hydro, or hydroacoustic search, was the technology invented in the First World War in order to track submerged submarines, and it's the one thing in World of Warships that it doesn't actually do. Now, Quibus's use of his own hydrophone there allowed him to, I mean, it only pinged the location of the Grosser Kurfürst for 6 seconds, but that was enough for him to know that he was more than 6 kilometers away. So if he popped back up to periscope depth, he would be able to reacquire and re-ping the Grosser Kurfürst as a target for the homing torpedoes without his periscope being detected by the Grosser Kurfürst's hydrophones. Yes, that's right. Listening with hydrophones spots periscopes. I know. This isn't reality. It's World of Warships. Here's the thing, though. If the Grosser Kurfürst had just done what the Iparanga did and closed in, he would have won, because he had the hit points and the torpedo damage reduction to weather the incoming homing torpedoes. The torpedoes do basically no damage when launched from point-blank range, and the Grosser Kurfürst has double the speed of the U-4501, as well as that hydro and secondaries that will absolutely shred it on the surface. But the Ipiranga chose to close in when it should have kept its distance, and the Großer chose to run away when it should have closed in. And of course the two Jaegers that could have finished Quibus off easily were nowhere to be seen. But you know what the amusing thing about this is? It's not the Ipiranga zigging when it should have zagged and the Großer zagging when it should have zigged. It's the points that both teams were on when the battle timer expired. Not quite as dramatic as Vanji's experience earlier, but the enemy team were only 2 points away from winning it. If the Ipiranga hadn't suicided, they would have won it. But what are you going to do? Congratulations, Quibus, solo warrior. Well, I hope you all enjoyed it. And as is traditional with an episode of Why You Have to Be Mad, take care, and I'll catch you next time, because we all know how these videos end.
It's only a game. Why you have to be mad?